Hello.
Hello, and welcome to WTF Stories and Advice. I'm Caroline Cranshaw,
And I'm Daryl Goes.
and today we are continuing our new series, Riding the Crazy Train, and we're going to talk about something a little bit different.
Ooh, I'm excited.
We're going to talk about the Montauk Project. Now, are you familiar with the Montauk Project?
Everything's faster with a montage.
Oh.
Is that the one that's from The Simpsons where they have when you put all one scene after another in quick succession with music, and then you can fast forward time in a TV
Oh.
show? It's called a montage. After this, you have to Google Simpsons montage song, and you'll be really happy you did.
Well, I swear the Simpsons writers they must be time travelers or have some type of portal into the future because
Yes.
there's no way they can be that accurate on everything. Like, how many things have they predicted to come true?
Everything, I think. I think, like, The Simpsons puts Nostradamus to shame. Although when you've had 400 million episodes, chances are you're going to write about everything that could happen as well.
Well, it kind of goes into the theory of maybe time isn't linear. Maybe it is more everything's happening at the same time. And so we can tune in to things. I don't know. Or are these all these parallel universes? So I don't know. I get confused.
Or is it cause and effect? Does The Simpsons cause things to happen? Like that Heroes TV show, and there was an artist, and whatever he drew came true. So it could be that. Yeah, Matt Groening is like more clever than we thought.
Yeah, it could be. So the Montauk Project was basically the story behind Stranger Things. And Stranger Things' working title was Montauk before they decided, instead of making it on Long Island, where the original conspiracy comes from, they decided to make it in a small town in Indiana, maybe so they wouldn't get sued.
And because all good TV shows from the 80s, like Home Alone, aren't they from Indiana? That movies rather.
Yeah, I guess so. I've never been to Indiana, actually, but I don't know. Maybe it's
And you've
good.
got like that Christmas movie that Americans watch every year. I think that's in Indiana as well. I triple dog dare you. You know, he licks the pole and his
Oh,
tongue sticks
yes.
to it.
That Christmas story, right?
Yeah, that could
That
be
is
it.
that is such a good movie. My mother would make me watch that every Christmas, and you'll shoot your eye out. Um,
Yeah.
and then the chair that was like the lady's leg that he put in the window, and the mother was like, "Oh
Yes.
no,
Fragile.
yeah, it's Italian." I'll have to watch that movie again. That reminds me of my childhood. Okay, so the Montauk Project. So, rumors that the US government has been conducting experiments in psychological warfare in Montauk at either Camp Hero or the Montauk Air Force Station, which it was before,
Mm-hmm.
began like coming into rumors in the 80s. And there's this guy named Preston Nichols who basically said he had recovered memories of working in this mysterious experiment and wrote a book on it.
Oh.
And the interesting thing is that other people around the same time did the same. And so his story got corroborated.
Yeah.
That word. And by other people as well. But I mean, maybe they're just having mass psychosis. I don't know.
Well, it also could be if one story comes out, you could have all the crazies wanting to ride the crazy train and go, yeah, that was that happened to me too, and I don't think anybody's crazy, but people want attention, and people have different motivations for saying things happen or that they've been involved in things. Have there been UFO abductions? Quite possibly. Are there way more people say they're abducted than possibly there have been? Yeah, quite maybe. And so if one person was involved, what struck me is you said recovered memories. So it implies that he lost them.
Yeah. So he didn't remember. And then I guess his girlfriend was a hypnotherapist and she started doing these regressions with him. And I've read his PDF and I'll put a link to his book that you can read it yourself. But it's documenting all these session she did with him and exactly what she said. And what I found interesting was there was definitely some leading questions. And as you and I both know, if you ask people
Hmm.
leading questions, which is the premise of hypnotherapy, and if you do regression with people, is you have to never ask leading questions. And a leading question is like, let's say like how you and I would use it is if someone's having terrible anxiety and they don't really know where it comes from, and they feel like there's some memories that need to be cleared. So we'll regress them. And what you do is you say, okay, take them back to this other time and place. You're going maybe through a tunnel. You're getting younger and smaller. You're on the other side. You're there now. Are you inside? Oh, okay. Now, whoops, I just hypnotized Daryl. Daryl, come out of it. No,
I'm
no.
here. I'm here. I'm
Okay,
back.
listen, sorry. And for anyone else, you are wide awake and aware and in full control. And I got to be careful, don't I? And so you're very careful to never, because if you say, are you inside? Who's with you? But what you do is, are you inside? Are you outside? Are you alone or is someone with you? You keep it so you're not, if you just say, are you inside? Who's with you? What's happening? Are they touching you? Like and people will
They'll follow you.
follow along and they'll create it in their subconscious mind. They'll start to visualize what you're saying and they will create memories. And this is what really pisses me off about this is part of
Yeah.
why you and I teach hypnotherapy, because there's a lot of people who haven't been trained well. And it's
Yeah.
so dangerous if it's not done by someone who really knows what they're doing. So never, ever let someone just play around with hypnosis. At least, well, suggestive, they just want to, tell you not to smoke or that you're going to eat less and exercise more. That's all good. But don't let them take you back to memories unless they are very highly qualified in regression techniques. But anyway, so this all,
And that there's a good reason to do it.
yeah. Yeah. Because you don't want someone kicking their feet around in your brain and fucking shit up, okay? Because that's not good. And then if they do implant these false memories, it is like it's happened.
Yeah.
It is, and it's very hard to get them out of that again. So, anyhow,
So this guy, he was hypnotized, and when you read the transcript, it looks like the questions were perhaps
there were
leading.
some leading questions. There were
Hmm.
some leading questions, but she knew she was asking a leading question when she did. And she would comment, oops, shouldn't have said that. That was a leading question. So I thought that was interesting. So she knew she just shouldn't have been doing that. Or when she transcribed the session, she went, ooh, shit. Because people just don't think sometimes, right?
Hmm.
So it all ties in. The Montauk Project ties in with the Philadelphia experiment. And the Philadelphia experiment was this secret experiment in like 1943. And apparently it was funded with Nazi money, which is really
Okay.
interesting. And there was $5 billion worth of Nazi gold that went missing going through an allied country. And supposedly it was the US who seized this $5 billion worth of gold. And $5 billion back then of gold is now like $500 billion now. So apparently they used that money for the Philadelphia experiment and other interesting experiments they did.
Hmm.
But what they wanted to do is they wanted to figure out how to make ships invisible to radar. And while they were doing this experiment, and apparently Nikola Tesla, the amazing genius who, if I could have dinner with anybody, living or dead, who I would pick is Nikola Tesla. Absolutely.
Okay.
Look him up if you haven't heard of him, because he is amazing. Like so many incredible experiments he conducted and patents like unbelievable. Anyways, so when they were doing this Philadelphia experiment, they did make this ship disappear, which they thought it was just invisible, but actually they think it went into a different dimension. And
Ooh.
that apparently it appeared like 200 miles away and then disappeared from there and then came back. But there was men on this ship. And so there was people who were involved in that as well. And so they did a movie in 1984 called The Philadelphia Experiment. And this was adapted from a book about this conspiracy. And it followed two of the sailors that were on this USS Eldridge, which was the ship that supposedly disappeared.
Hmm.
And they not only apparently went through this other portal time and place, but they went 40 years forward in time. And that they supposedly revived the experiment when these people went forward in time and told them what happened.
Ooh.
But apparently it kept a portal open. And so, anyways, that's another whole story is Philadelphia experiment. But there's this guy, or 1988, this guy is a 57-year-old named Al Bielek, who he watched this movie and he kept having this eerie feeling of deja vu. And he was completely convinced that he had lived this or had something to do with it. And so they say he was able to uncover repressed memories with new age therapies, which let's assume that's hypnosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he recovered these memories of having worked on this thing called the Montauk Project in the 70s and 80s, and that his memory had been wiped. And he also apparently figured out his name was not Al Bielak, but Edward Cameron,
Okay.
and that he worked with his brother, Duncan Cameron, when they were in their mid 20s. So Al presents his story at this like UFO conference and claimed that the Philadelphia experiment was real and that he was living proof that he had been there and that Nikola Tesla had been involved in the whole thing, and it opened up this wormhole. And that when they went forward in time, what they did is they went forward in time to 1983 and they landed at this Montauk Air Force Base, which was now called Camp Hero.
Mm-hmm.
And the military apparently sent them back through the wormhole to destroy the equipment on the ship.
To go back in time and destroy it.
Yeah, because I guess they didn't want this portal to be open.
Okay.
That things could come through. So,
like Demogorgons.
exactly. And so that apparently he had his memory wiped and been forced to live his life as this other person. I don't know. I mean, that all just sounds crazy. This guy's story like circulated and it gained the attention of this other guy named Preston Nichols, who wrote this other book, The Montauk Project.
Mm-hmm.
And they both had what they believed to be the same memories of working together.
Okay.
And that they had been friends and that they worked together on this thing called the Montauk chair, which was a piece of furniture that used electromagnetics to amplify psychic powers. Right? And isn't there's something with Stranger Things with that, right?
Yeah. Whether it's the same thing, I'm not sure. But there is a couple of scenes where Elle, she's like the girl that's supposedly been kidnapped as a child and brought up in this facility, and they're trying to develop her psychic powers. They sit her in a chair and they put on this like wire net on her head,
Mm-hmm.
which of course I thought initially was just measuring things, but maybe it's amplifying because she's trying to expand her abilities while it's on. So she's trying to like kill a cat and stuff like that using her mind, which she does. Well, I won't spoil it in case you haven't seen it. but it's not about cat murdering. Just don't worry about that.
Oh, speaking of cat murdering, have you seen Don't Fuck with Cats?
Yes, I have.
So
No te
good.
metes con los gatos.
Yes. Highly recommend that Netflix Don't Fuck with Cats if you haven't seen it. Amazing.
I think you mentioned it on a podcast once, and I went and watched it straight away afterwards, and loved it.
So good. A little bit. Yeah, I just closed my eyes with the cat stuff, but we won't go into that. So they found this guy with his recovered memories. They had done all this work on this Montauk chair and they could manifest objects just by thinking about them. There was an experiment they did called the seeing eye. And if they took a lock of a person's hair or some object that they owned, that they could concentrate on the person and be able to see through their eyes and hear through their ears and feel what they felt.
Yeah.
And he could do this with anyone on the planet as long as he had some kind of physical connection to them, right?
Yeah.
So apparently these guys worked together and became like these hugely powerful psychics. And I know this story is just sounding more and more.
I mean, you're not saying it's true. It's a conspiracy theory. So
yeah,
it's intriguing.
So they wanted to really learn how to do mind control, and they apparently, according to this Nichols guy, is they started to kidnap children.
These guys did.
Well, the people running the experiments.
Okay.
That there was other boys being brought in and experimented on, and some were like sent through this portal to unknown places or in time. And Stranger Things kind of like works on this theory, right? 11, there was 10 other subjects, right? If she's 11.
Yeah.
And he called the abductees the Montauk Boys, and they were all having these memories. And apparently, then once they came out with this, there was other Long Island men who had recovered memories or started remembering being abducted from their homes and
Shit.
having them do hypnosis on them and like all this really crazy stuff. And they claimed that after several years of experimenting in this Montauk chair, that they could reliably travel to other times and places, even to Mars. Apparently, they spent a lot of time on Mars.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and that they could just start to do it even without the chair. So apparently, they left the chair on running all the time, and
Mhm.
they really did create this portal to 1943.
So, like, the chair was the portal, and people could come and.
Yeah, I guess the chair was this amplifier, but it was this massive Air Force base that had what used to be like the biggest, most powerful radar detector, like
Mhm.
massive dish that would pick up on this stuff. The military base was decommissioned in 1963 or 64, but that place has always stayed there. It's like I don't know what you call it, like a camp, not really a camp, but it's like places where people can go and check out, but you can't go in the buildings or anything. But
Okay.
because there's this huge dish there, they've kind of left it. And in 2009, this guy wakes up one morning. He's lived in this town forever and he has a view of the dish from his house. And the dish had always been in the same place forever because
Mhm.
supposedly no one's there. And it had moved 90 degrees. And he's just like, what the hell? Right. So he calls the police and says, this dish has moved. And this is true.
Yeah.
And so the policeman comes out, and even though he's lived in the town forever, he can't remember which way the dish was. And so he went and he actually interviewed some neighbors and asked them. And some of them said, yep, it's definitely moved. Others couldn't remember either. Just shows how observant most of us are.
I mean, it's also what you might not care what position it's facing. It's
Yeah,
just
you're just not
there.
really thinking about it.
Yeah.
But they were kind of like, oh, that's weird, but whatever. And then it moves again. Like a day or two later, it moves again in another 90-degree turn.
And I'm assuming not in response to wind or anything like that.
No, and because now it's no longer a dish, it's like a metal frame. So it's like wires, right? Like all the covering on the dish is gone because it's so old that
Okay.
it's just this, so it really couldn't be blown. But they went inside this camp or this building and said there's no way that anyone could have turned it. Like it's locked solid and rusted or whatever. And but then it moved again and they're just like, what the hell? So they set up like all this observation. They even went to some of the neighbors and set up observation in their houses. And within a few days, the chief of the police is like, this is ridiculous. We're not wasting money on this. Who cares? And so he's like, cut it. And then as soon as he cuts it, the next day it moved again.
Whoa.
Yeah. So they've never really figured out why this thing moved. And I think they've either torn it down now or going to tear it down. So there was all these people who had these recovered memories and that they had like alien life forms and weird humanoids coming through these portals as well. And it was like opening up this other world that things were coming through. And apparently some monster came through and
So it really is very Stranger Things.
this is
Like the
what it's
whole
based on. The whole
actual.
thing.
So it's not just the abductions and the psychic experiments and so on, but it's the actual.
The monsters as well. And in 2008, an unidentified carcass of an animal washed up on the beach of Long Island. And it's like they don't even know what it was, but they called it the Montauk Monster.
Ooh.
Yeah. And people claim they still can hear screams from it. But it's just interesting. I mean, who knows? A lot of it does sound very much made up to me.
But just wait till I go to the kids and go, "Hey, kids, you know Stranger Things that you've just been watching? You know that's real." like
All
they'll be
true.
terrified.
They
Oh.
would be. They would be. And yeah, you should definitely look up the frame of the thing, this dish, because you can see how it wouldn't just blow in the wind. But there is all kinds of secret military ops and mind control things that, like with the MK Ultra, which we'll definitely go into, where they did experiments with giving people LSD and hypnosis and all these things to see how they could influence people and could they create psychic abilities. And this was a CIA project.
Yeah.
And it was 7% of the CIA's budget went to MK Ultra. That's a lot.
That's quite a lot. That's so out of all of the projects, out of all of the states that they're working in, out of all the things they're doing, that's like $7 out of 100 is for this one project, whatever it happens to be. So it can't have been small. It must have been massive.
It was, and it was at universities not only all over America, but in the world. Like Australia was running experiments. There was several in Europe. There was places all over the world running these experiments on people with drugs and how they could influence people. Remember, we were teaching NLP, which is something called neuro-linguistic programming. And I came across this book that talked about how the CIA created alters or other personalities that they can control. And I remember describing it to you and it freaked you out so bad. I was like, we should teach this.
Yeah, because, well, what it was I just completely didn't believe it. I was like, based on my knowledge of the human brain and the mind, I was like, no, that's just fantasy. That can't happen. That can't work. And then you gave me some more details and you sent me one of the scripts
Uh-huh.
that they would use. And I read that script and I freaked out. I was like, oh, actually, that would work. Like, based on my knowledge of the mind and extensive experience with hypnosis, that would work. That on not on everybody, but there would be definitely people that would work on. And I now, for the first time, believe that mind control of another is possible purposefully, and that the CIA did likely develop something, or whether they did, or whether they copied it from someone else. And well, I mean, again, I don't know the source of this book other than it's the
Ellipsis manual, is if you're interested.
the ellipsis
And
manual.
yeah, but the technique they did was they would hypnotize someone and they'd have them imagine walking down a hallway and there's all these doors and suddenly the hallway would start filling up with water. And you get panicky and you're floating up to the top and there's just a little tiny bit of air left and then it completely, okay, don't be hypnotized. Stop it. You're back. Daryl is so hypnotizable. I have to be very, very careful. The thing is, if someone else was saying that to you, you wouldn't go into such a hypnotic state, would you?
No, I just used to following you in trances.
Yeah, and you trust me, so
And I
you know
trust
that
you.
I wouldn't ever do anything untoward. I'm just try to be so ethical that I never want to harm anybody. But you'd almost drown, and then this door would open, and this person would save you. And I think they would do it several times. Like you'd
They'd
get
have another version of yourself save you, wouldn't they?
yes,
A self that they controlled.
yeah, but the water would fill up and down, up and down. The door wouldn't open initially, and it would fill up and down and up and down, and you'd almost drown like 3 or 4 times, and then finally the door would open, and it would be this other version of you who'd save you, and then it was splitting the personality, right? And they tried all these things with splitting personalities, and I mean, it's probably not great for talking about this stuff probably freaks people out even more about hypnosis. And that's why you really only should go to someone who you trust, who's ethical, who's well trained.
I mean, we don't personally seek out controlling people with hypnosis. It's not what it's about. And I had this conversation with someone today, but they're like, can you make me not like something? I could say, yeah, well, I could use a technique that will manipulate your mind to not like this bad food or whatever. And you're doing it with consent, informed consent. Whereas this stuff it wasn't just hypnotherapy, it was covert. It was deliberately trying to circumvent someone's will.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing is 99.9% of hypnotherapists have no interest in anything like that. But I think always trust your gut. If you get a funny feeling about someone, and that's not just with hypnotherapy, that's with any mental health practitioner, with any healer, with anyone you go to. If you get a funny feeling in any way, just get the fuck out of there and say, I'm not comfortable. And who cares about being rude? Keep yourself safe. But I think it's trust your intuition. Your intuition will always guide you. And I think that's the thing is a lot of times when we get into situations where someone manipulates us or hurts us or does something that we didn't listen. We ignored the red flags and we didn't want to be rude. or we didn't want to believe someone had ill intent, and then we get fucked up. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, anyways, that's the Montauk Project. And
Ooh, so the question is it real? Well, I'm going to have to go and do my own research now, as you know, have a look at this project. But the concepts are that, yeah, the American government or the CIA opened a wormhole while they were trying to
yeah, do psychic experiments, basically.
do psychic experiments, which they also did on kidnapped children.
I know. And that's just disturbing and hopefully not true. But
Because
who
of course
knows?
things grow arms and legs, don't they? So the parts could be true and parts could be completely untrue, and it'd be hard to discern.
Exactly. And the guy saying he basically was to do with the Philadelphia Project and going back in time and all of that. That sounds a little far fetched to me. But I do know for a fact that, like you said, the military has been involved in some pretty dodgy things. And hopefully, they're not running experiments like that anymore. I think now it's more about just advanced weaponry, right? So,
I don't know. I would guess. I mean, I'd guess these days probably. Well, I wouldn't want to say, but I'd say biological warfare
mm. Yeah.
might be something that people are spending money on.
Yeah. Well, gain of function and yeah. So hopefully we won't all get monkeypox and die. Yeah.
Well, I won't.
Well, that's just a little bit about that. And if you have a conspiracy you would like us to investigate, or have any information or have heard anything about the Montauk Project or Philadelphia experiment or anything along those lines, write to us at WTF Stories and Advice on gmail.com. And, or if you just want to tell us anything else, or you have a question, and we answer a lot of psychological questions as well. So if you have any questions, ask as well.
So don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with all of your friends. The more people that listen, the more motivated we are to get back and make more episodes for you guys and put up all this cool content.
Cool. Well, that's us for today. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.